You know that moment when you're feeling smug at the airport because you packed smart? Then TSA opens your bag and the agent goes, "Whose is this?" Like you tried to smuggle a science experiment. What's changed is how often you're running into the newer scanners. Sometimes an item doesn't show up as a thing, it shows up as a dense block, something the screen can't instantly make sense of. And that's when your bag gets pulled and your timeline starts melting. The good news is, most of these delays are avoidable. I'm going to show you how to pack these items so you don't get the surprise unzip at the table. And one quick heads up, people say TSA took it, but TSA is only the first checkpoint. Some of the biggest problems actually happen at customs or CBP or under the rules of the country you're landing in, even if you're just connecting. So today, we're covering 15 everyday items that can get flagged, held up, or tossed in 2026. And item number 15, totally normal at home, and a whole different story once a border is involved. Let's start with the innocent looking stuff that causes the biggest headaches. You'd be surprised how many cute little gifts get treated like a full-size bottle of shampoo. At the checkpoint, it's usually more about the container's size than how full it is. So that souvenir jar that's basically empty, if it's marked over 3.4 ounces or 100 milliliters, you can still lose it. Same vibe with snow globes, the tiny ones can usually slide through if they fit in your quart-sized liquids bag. Bigger snow globes, those are the ones that end up getting checked or tossed. Where travelers really get burned is anything thick or in a little jar. Think peanut butter, gooey snacks, or skincare in a tub. Add glass, add something hard to see through, and even harmless stuff can turn into a quick pause and check at the table. If you want the low stress move, check it or ship it home. If you have to carry it on, decant it into travel size containers and keep it in your liquids bag so it looks boring during screening. And for medical liquids, TSA generally allows reasonable quantities, but keep them separate and declare them up front so you're explaining for 10 seconds instead of standing there for 10 minutes. And the next item is the one that quietly wastes the most time. This one hurts because it's usually coming from a good place. You're trying to save money, you're trying to avoid airport food, you're being prepared, then you wrap your sandwich or burrito in foil, and now you've basically gift wrapped a mystery object for screening. That's how you get your bag pulled even when you're not carrying anything banned. Foil is great at keeping food warm. It also makes the image harder to see clearly. Instead of obvious edges and layers, it can look like one solid block. And that's when your bag takes a little side trip to the table. And it's not just burritos. Tight, dense snacks can do it too, like a brick of gummies or a thick stack of protein bars. None of it is banned. It tends to trigger the "let's take a closer look" routine, and that routine is where you lose time, especially when the line is packed and you're trying to make boarding. So make one simple switch. Pack food in something clear and keep it right near the top of your bag. A clear container or plastic wrap near the zipper means if they ask, you're showing it in 2 seconds, not watching them unpack your whole life in public. Now, if you think food can slow you down, powders are a whole different kind of detour. Ever tossed protein powder into your carry-on and thought, "This is smart, what could go wrong?" And here's the most common mistake. You scoop it into an unmarked plastic container or a Ziploc to save space. It feels organized, it feels efficient, and at a checkpoint, it can look like a bag of loose white powder. Powders are a sneaky time trap, especially when any single container gets past about 12 ounces or 350 milliliters, roughly the size of a standard soda can. Food powders fall into this all the time, like protein, pancake mix, or ground coffee. Then you've got the other bucket, supplement-type powders and baby-related stuff, like electrolyte mixes, greens powders, and formula. TSA can't assume what it is just because you know what it is, so it may get swabbed or tested, and you might get a few questions while your bag sits open on the table. So, how do you bring powders without turning screening into a whole episode? Stick with original packaging when you can. If you have to transfer it, label it clearly. And when you're close to or over that threshold, place the powder items up top, and if they ask, pull them out into their own tray so you're not inviting a full bag search to prove your coffee is coffee. If it's medically necessary, like baby formula, keep it easy to grab and be ready to explain it up front. And the next one is brutal, because it's the thing people pack to be more organized, and it's exactly what gets them stuck the longest. Do you travel with one of those little Monday to Sunday pill cases? It's super normal, and it's also one of those things that tends to get extra questions, because a case full of loose pills has zero context. At home, it screams organized. At security, it can look like random tablets, and that's when the conversation starts. In the US, TSA might ask and move on. The bigger snag is when you're flying internationally or connecting through another country, because once a border is involved, unlabeled meds can turn into a verification situation, especially if any of your prescriptions fall under controlled categories. So here's what to do at home. Keep prescriptions in the original pharmacy bottles with the label, and bring a printed medication list that includes the generic names. If you still want the organizer for the flight, use it, but keep the labeled bottles and that list in the same pouch so you can show what's what without digging. And speaking of things that get people stopped even when they're doing the healthy thing, wait until you hear what happens with incense and herbal powders. Have you ever packed something meaningful, then realized it looks like unidentified plant stuff to a stranger at a checkpoint? Maybe it's incense for a ceremony, dried herbs from home, or a small ritual powder. To you, it's normal. But once it's in a plain pouch or a little jar with no label, it can slow things down because they can't tell what it is at a glance, especially on international routes or during transit. The goal is clarity without the awkward moment. Pack, present, speak. Pack it with a clear label whenever you can. Original packaging is best. And if you repack it, label it yourself. Present it with zero digging. Keep it in your carry-on in a single, obvious pouch so you can pull it out immediately instead of watching someone excavate your bag. Speak like you're answering a normal question. These are labeled incense and herbs for cultural or religious use. Calm, straightforward, done. Now we're shifting into tech, and this next category catches even frequent flyers off guard: batteries and power banks, especially when the label is faded enough to become a problem. You know how power banks get scuffed up over time? The label can wear down enough that if the agent can't verify it fast, you're the one who pays for that uncertainty. Depending on the lane and the airport, you might get extra screening, you might get told to leave it behind, or you might lose enough time that your I'm early cushion disappears. As a baseline, up to 100 watt-hours is typically fine in carry-on. 100 to 160 watt-hours is the range that can require airline approval. Over 160 watt-hours is generally a no-go for passengers. A lot of power banks only show milliamp hours. So here's the quick conversion idea. 27,000 milliamp hours at 3.7 volts is roughly around the 100 watt-hours line. But in real life, the trap isn't the limit. It's a label that's scratched, faded, or missing. So protect your ability to prove what it is. When the battery is still new, snap a clear photo of the specs. If you can, keep a screenshot of the manufacturer's spec page or the manual that shows the model and watt-hours rating. And if the label is gone completely, the least dramatic move is honestly to swap it for one that's clearly marked, because can't verify is where the drama lives. One more reminder people forget: power banks and spare lithium batteries go in your carry-on, not checked. After you finish this video, pull out the exact power bank you actually travel with and check it. If you can't clearly read the watt-hours on the label, or you can't back it up with the model specs, fix that at home, because the airport is the worst place to find out. Next up is the premium travel item that surprises people the most. Because it's not the suitcase that's the issue, it's what's hiding inside it. Smart luggage feels like a genius upgrade, until you get to check-in and someone asks the one question that matters: can the battery come out? Because the issue isn't the GPS or the fancy lock, it's the lithium battery safety rules. If your smart suitcase has a battery that can't be removed easily by hand, without tools, you can end up stuck at the counter doing the worst kind of airport puzzle. Rule of thumb, if you need a screwdriver, treat it like it's not removable. I've seen someone crack open their suitcase right there at the counter, clothes everywhere, trying to reach the battery compartment while the line behind them kept growing. Not a fun moment. So do the check at home. If the battery pops out cleanly, remove it before you check the bag and bring it in the cabin like a spare battery, ideally with the terminals protected so it can't short out. If it doesn't come out easily, make that suitcase carry-on only, or use a regular suitcase on trips where you're checking luggage. And speaking of design choices that create problems, let's talk about water bottles with hidden compartments. Have you ever bought one of those Travel Genius water bottles that has a secret compartment in the bottom? This is where a lot of people get blindsided. The bottle being empty isn't the issue. The design is. Anything with a twist-off base, a double wall that creates a storage space, or a hidden compartment is more likely to get extra attention because it's not instantly obvious what you're looking at. And trust me, security doesn't have time to guess what that space is for. If they can't clear it quickly, that's when you can get stuck in extra screening, or get told to find another option for the bottle. So picture this, you're traveling with a nice insulated bottle, and it gets pulled aside because the bottom unscrews and there's a hollow space. You're saying, it's just for supplements, and the vibe is, cool, now show me. If you want the smoothest experience, travel with a simple, one-piece bottle with no hidden storage. And if you're bringing the twist-off kind anyway, don't wait for the question, put it in its own bin and open the compartment up front. Turning mysterious design into totally transparent is the fastest way out of that moment. The next item is tiny, super common, and way more complicated once international rules get involved. If you're the kind of person who tosses a vape in your pocket and never thinks about it again, this part is for you. In the US, the TSA line usually isn't where people get surprised. It's everything around it. Because it's a lithium battery device, it gets handled under lithium battery safety rules. So keep it with you in the cabin, not buried in checked luggage. Make sure it can't accidentally turn on in your bag. And on the plane, don't use it and don't charge it. A lot of people who would never vape on board still get tripped up by the "I'll just top it off real quick" habit. Now add international travel and connections, and things can flip fast. Same device, different country, totally different consequences, and yes, a layover can count. Mexico is a perfect example. Around January 17th, 2026, news reports and travel warnings flagged a tougher enforcement push, and some reports tied to the broader crackdown mentioned penalties that can reach roughly $12,500. Travel outlets have also warned visitors there's a real risk of confiscation, and depending on the situation, it can get more complicated than people expect. So here's what I'd put on screen and do every time. Check the rules for every stop on your itinerary, including transit airports. If you're not 100% sure, leaving it at home is the least stressful option. If you do bring it, keep it in carry-on, keep it switched off, and pack pods or juice under the 311 liquids rule like everything else. And staying in the tiny gadget big consequences lane, the next one is a lighter that looks normal until someone realizes it's basically a little plasma torch. That slick USB lighter you bought online, the one that looks normal until you click it and it turns into a tiny lightning machine, airports don't treat that like just a lighter. Quick way to think about it. Because it has a lithium battery, it comes with stricter handling. Arc or plasma lighters are carry-on only, and they need to be protected from accidental activation, usually a case or a real safety lock. That's the kind of detail they look for when deciding whether it's safe to travel. And once you're on the plane, don't charge it. And here's the part that surprises a lot of people. Torch, jet, or blue flame lighters aren't allowed in the cabin or checked bags at all under US rules. If you want the least hassle, keep it simple. Under US rules, most passengers are limited to one butane or Zippo-type lighter in carry-on or on your person. If your carry-on gets gate checked, pull the lighter out and keep it with you. And don't toss a fueled lighter into checked baggage unless you're using a DOT-approved travel case. Otherwise, the safe assumption is empty only. And coming up next, the stuff that looks harmless until you realize TSA treats it like a weapon even when it's literally a toy. You're heading to the airport with a kid, and you bring the perfect peace offering in your carry-on, a bright, goofy toy blaster. Neon colors, foam darts, zero chance anyone thinks it's real. And then you hit the checkpoint and realize this is one of those items that can still turn into a headache. That's the part that catches people off guard. In the air travel world, looks like a weapon can be enough to trigger extra screening, or you need to deal with this moment because the final call still comes down to the officer in front of you. TSA's guidance generally allows toy guns and toy weapons, but it also warns that realistic replicas can be prohibited, and it often ends up being smoother to pack anything weapon-shaped in checked baggage from the start. And yes, before anyone asks, lightsabers are kind of their own weird exception. Don't use that as a green light for other weapon-shaped toys. So the move here isn't to argue at the table. It's to avoid the last-minute scramble. If you're traveling with kids, or you're headed to a convention, put weapon-shaped toys and props in checked luggage, or buy them after you land. And if you're carrying something that looks even remotely realistic, assume it'll get more attention, and plan accordingly. And if you think toy weapons are picky, the next category is worse, because it's the tactical, everyday stuff people forget is even in their bag. Most people don't pack these on purpose. They just forget they own them. And it's always the tiniest thing, like a tactical pen clipped inside a side pocket, that turns into an unexpected stop. And be honest, how many of us are flying with the same everyday bag we use for everything? It's the same backpack you take to the gym, the same tote you use every day, the same keychain you've had forever, and somewhere in that random stuff ecosystem is something that reads very differently in an airport than it does at home. Two classics that cause the most grief in a carry-on, a tactical pen and a multi-tool with a blade, especially the little card-style one people forget even has an edge. Those are the ones that can turn into a stop real fast. So don't gamble with your schedule. Before every trip, do a quick bag audit, check the keychain, check the side pockets, and dump any tiny zip pouches you never empty. If it's pointy, sharp, or tactical looking, move it to checked baggage or leave it at home. Alright, let's talk about camping gear because that's where I didn't think about it can get serious quickly. If your bag still smells a little like campfire, airports tend to get opinionated. Because a lot of camping gear is totally normal in the woods, but looks like a problem at a checkpoint. The classic one is tent stakes. They're small, they're just metal, and TSA guidance treats them like sharp objects that belong in checked baggage. Plus, it's always officer discretion, so a carry-on full of stakes is basically asking for trouble. Now the big one, fuel. FAA guidance is blunt. Camp stove fuel is forbidden in both carry-on and checked baggage, and that includes the canisters and equipment, if there's any residual fuel or vapor. So the empty canister you kept as a backup can still count as fuel related, because empty in your head isn't the same as no residue in their rules. Your stove itself is a separate hassle. TSA says a camp stove can be allowed only if it's completely empty and cleaned with no fuel, vapors, or residue. So even if you do everything right, be ready for extra scrutiny. The least stressful plan is check the sharp hardware, don't fly with fuel at all, and either deep clean the stove or plan to buy or ship what you need at your destination. We've been talking about things that slow you down or get taken. The next group is different because one mistake can bring in fines, law enforcement, and a trip that ends before it starts. This is the part of the trip where TSA isn't the one you're dealing with anymore. Customs and agriculture inspection is. And it's usually not the big stuff that gets people. It's the apple you grabbed from the lounge for later, or the sandwich you walked off the plane with because you didn't want to waste it. CBP's expectation is straightforward. Declare agricultural items. That includes things like fruits, vegetables, plants, seeds, and certain foods that can carry restricted ingredients. And here's the part that changes people's behavior fast. If you don't declare, and it's found, CBP can issue a civil penalty And there are plenty of real cases where it starts at $300 for failing to declare prohibited agricultural items. Yeah, $300 for a snack? So stop treating it like a snack technicality. Before you hit the line, do this quick pocket sweep. Check every pouch, every side pocket, and either finish or toss anything fresh. Not 100% sure? Just declare it anyway. Declaring usually gets you a quick look instead of them thinking you're trying to sneak it in. Packaged stuff? Keep it sealed in the original packaging, and it's way less drama. All right, now we get to the last item, the category that feels totally unrelated to TSA until it turns into a real border problem. If item 14 was the "oops, I forgot I had an apple" problem, item 15 is bigger, things that can be totally legal at home, then become a border issue the second you cross into another country. Start with first bucket, fakes. Counterfeit designer stuff can be seized, and if a fine comes into play, it may be based on what the real item sells for at retail, not whatever you paid for the knockoff. But here's where it gets even crazier. Substances. CBD and cannabinoid products are the sneakiest because they feel normal in the US, but a lot of places treat anything cannabis related as illegal or controlled. And don't let THC free make you relax. Hong Kong is a clean example. Since February 1st, 2023, CBD has been treated as a dangerous drug there, with severe penalties on the books. Transit counts here too. And the absolute biggest red flag? Devices and weapons. Drones can trigger strict permit rules and serious penalties in some countries. Everyday self-defense items, like pepper spray hiding in a coin pocket, can be treated as prohibited weapons. And the biggest red flag is firearms and ammo. People reuse an old range bag, forget what's in a side pocket, and suddenly it's not. Oops. TSA reported intercepting 6,678 firearms at checkpoints in 2024, about 94% loaded. And once that happens, law enforcement gets involved. If you travel with firearms legally, it has to be unloaded, locked in a hard-sided case, checked, and declared at check-in. So here's the 1-0 second border audit that prevents most of this. Start with the bag you use every day, empty it, and check every tiny pouch. Then look at your itinerary, every country you're entering or transiting, and treat any gray zone item as a leave-at-home item. That one habit saves more trips than people realize. If you take nothing else from this video, take this. A lot of airport pain isn't about bad luck. It's about one tiny item that turns your bag into a question, or turns your arrival into a border conversation you didn't plan for. Now, I'm curious, which item surprised you the most? And what's the most ridiculous thing you've ever had pulled out of your bag at security? Drop it in the comments, I read them, and I'll borrow the best stories for future videos. If this saved you even one bag search, hit like so more travelers see it. And subscribe if you want more videos that break down airport rules without the gotcha nonsense. Safe travels, and I'll see you in the next one.